back to chapter 2 of project management, and this chapter will deal with project identification and selection. It is the second chapter in the textbook, and this particular chapter deals with exploring how you go about selecting different projects and the process by which you do that, as well as how to compile a project charter, which is one of the key documents that you need to create within the initiation process, as well as the second theme will deal with project soliciting projects and requesting project proposals. So theme 1 covers off pages 36 to 53, and after this particular section you will understand how to apply project identification criteria, as well as developing a project and preparing a request for a proposal. So if I should ask you to think about your personal motivation, and what personal need motivated you to enroll for a specific qualification that you are currently doing. If you think of your business, you think of your BCom degree that you're currently doing, why have you decided to do that? There must have been certain specific steps that you would have taken to make that decision, or possibly your parents sat you down and you would have sat down with certain criteria. These are the things that I wanted to do. Now, within project management, it is the same thing. We follow the same process in which there are certain sort of needs within the business and within the business environment that drive the formation of specific projects. So think back to chapter 1, in which we all talked about what is a project and how is a project defined. And a project is defined as something that is specific, that is once-off, that has a specific cost to it, that has a sponsor to it, and has a specific timeline. And with a degree as well, it is something that you're doing once off. It has a specific timeline to it. It has a specific cost to it. It has a sponsor. For some of you, it has a sponsor that you have to sort of give feedback to. So very much like a project, your degree and the process of studying for a degree, it has the same characteristics as a project. So how do you go about identifying a project? The identification process starts in the initiation phase, and you'll find that on page 38. There needs to be some sort of need or some sort of problem or some sort of opportunity within the organization that drives the project or drives a need for a project to be developed. There's various ways of identifying projects. It is part of the organization's strategic planning. It's response to a specific or unexpected events, or it is a group that's organized to address a specific need within the organization. So it can either be a new product that needs to be developed, it can be a new piece of software that needs to be moved into the business, or a new piece of software that needs to be developed for the business. It's important to clearly identify the need and determine if it is worth pushing or worth pursuing internally. And then there is a very specific decision-making process to prioritize which product or which particular project is selected based on the greatest need. If you look on page 40, you'll see there is a project selection criteria. You evaluate the project needs based on its cost and its ultimate benefits for the organization. And in the process of selecting a project, there is a set of criteria that you choose. There's a list of assumptions. There you gather the data and you evaluate the opportunity. So for instance, you are busy, you've got the option of developing 3 or 4 different products to put into the marketplace. You then have to develop a set of criteria to evaluate each one of those products and see which ones develop the greatest ROI or return on investment. And as part of the criteria, you also look at risk, because your the one product A might deliver the greatest return on investment, but there's also a much greater risk that the product might not succeed. So you have to weigh up return on investment and risk, as well as possibility of success in terms of which product and which project to do. Once you've decided on a project, one of the key documents that you now need to develop is a project charter. And what is a project charter? A project charter is essentially a document that you present to your project sponsor for approval. And in that project charter, you commit to certain things. It is a commitment for funding. It summarizes the key conditions and parameters, as well as establish a framework to develop a baseline. So some of the things that's in a project charter would be the title, the purpose, the description of the project, the major deliverables of the project, acceptance criteria, a milestone schedule. Milestone schedule is a set of key dates that you will, and a timeline that you will abide by, key assumptions for the success of the project, as well as some constraints and some of the major risks that might impact the project. And it is an important document because in that document, once your sponsor signs off on the project charter, it essentially means that you can now go off and develop a project proposal. And the project charter is one of those important pieces and elements of the initiation process of a project. Then once you have completed your project charter, you then request for proposals or RFP. Once you have decided to outsource to an external source internally in business, you then have to comprehensively describe the project requirements. It includes the needs, the problem, the opportunity description. It allows for contractors to develop a thorough proposal. It facilitates development of evaluation criteria. And in most cases, it might be either an informal communication or formal communication. It might be in writing or it might be in verbal conversation. So for instance, you go off and you pitch. So in certain circumstances, so if you're building a bridge or if you are building a road, there are certain, this would be a very formal process and it would be in writing. However, if you are a advertising agency, you might go and pitch to a client for a certain project, and the client might have a conversation with you in the pitch meeting, and part of that conversation is this request for proposals. At the end of the meeting, the client says, I really like your idea, send me a proposal. So in that context, it is a verbal conversation or a conversation that takes place. And it's a very different context from, say, building a bridge or a piece of software where there is a very specific set of criteria that would be sort of communicated to all the contractors. Some of the guidelines you'll find in figure 2.3, some of the guidelines for RFP is the project objective and the purpose, the statement of work, what to be developed, and what is a key element of the project, the customer requirements, the deliverables, the acceptance criteria, what makes the project complete, as well as supplied items, as well as the state of approvals required, who is going to sign off, when is those signatures going to be signed, at what point. The RFP also includes things like the type of contract that is required, the payment terms, how is the client going to pay for it, the key milestone schedule, the list and format of the content of the instructions, to indicate the due dates when the project needs to be completed and at what points, and it also include the level of effort of funds available for the project as well. And that brings us to the end of the first part of this chapter, and the next part of the chapter will continue with the request for proposal preparation.